Have you ever felt the sting of silence? That moment when someone you care about drifts away without a word, leaving you questioning their absence, wondering if you did something wrong? It's a feeling we've all experienced, and it can be unsettling. But what if I told you that silence is not your enemy, that within its stillness lies wisdom, peace, and a deeper understanding of life's natural rhythm? Before we begin our journey into the meaning of silence and absence, take a moment to subscribe to this channel. If you find solace in these words, if you seek deeper understanding in life's mysteries, then let's walk this path together. Hit the like button to help more seekers find this wisdom, and share this video with someone who might need this message today. Now let's uncover the truth hidden in silence. Existence is like flowing water. It moves, it shifts, and it does not stay still for anyone. A Zen master once said, "A flower does not chase the bee, yet the bee comes when the flower is ready." If a person is absent, it does not necessarily mean rejection. Sometimes it means they are flowing with the currents of their own life. Sometimes it means we must learn to let go of expectations and allow life to unfold naturally. Clinging to someone, demanding their presence, or questioning their silence only creates suffering. True connection is effortless. It does not need to be forced. People grow, evolve, and find new paths to walk. Just as the river does not hold on to the fish that swim through its waters, we cannot hold on to people as if they belong to us. If we view absence as a personal slight, we place unnecessary burdens on ourselves. But if we see it as part of life's natural ebb and flow, we gain a sense of freedom. Sometimes silence is not a rejection, but a reflection of a journey that has taken a different direction. We must learn to embrace these changes with grace. The sun does not resent the moon for taking its place in the sky, and the tree does not cling to its falling leaves in autumn. Everything moves in its own time. Rather than questioning the silence of another, we can use that space to deepen our own presence, to cultivate inner peace, and to trust that those meant to be in our lives will find their way back naturally. Instead of mourning what is not, celebrate what was. The beauty of any relationship lies not in its permanence, but in the moments shared. A flower blooms for a short while, yet its fragrance lingers in memory. Absence does not erase the past. It merely reshapes how we carry it within us. It is in acceptance that we find peace, in stillness that we find clarity, and in letting go that we truly discover love in its purest form. There were once two friends who had shared many seasons together. They laughed under the same sun, walked beneath the same moon, and confided in each other as though they were two sides of the same soul. They spoke in hushed voices under starlit skies, making promises that felt unbreakable, believing that no distance could ever separate them. One day, life carried them in different directions. One remained in the place they always knew, where the streets were familiar, the air carried the scent of home, and every corner held a memory of their shared past. The other set out into the unknown, drawn by dreams and ambitions that led them beyond the horizon. At first, distance did not diminish their connection. They sent messages, exchanged stories, and kept each other close with the magic of words. But as the days passed, something began to shift. The messages became sporadic, the calls grew shorter, and eventually silence settled between them. Days turned into weeks. Weeks stretched into months. The one who stayed behind held their phone, staring at the screen, waiting for a sign that they had not been forgotten. The mind became a restless sea, waves of doubt crashing against the shore of reason. Had they changed? Had they found something or someone more important? Had I done something wrong? The silence was deafening, filling the void with questions that had no answers. Unable to bear the weight of uncertainty, the friend who had been left behind embarked on a journey, not just to find the one who had gone, but to find the wisdom to understand what their absence truly meant. They sought answers, searching not only for their friend, but for peace within themselves. What they discovered would change them forever, teaching them that silence is not always an absence, and that sometimes letting go is the greatest act of love. Through encounters with wisdom, the journey unfolded, not just to seek, but to understand. And in that understanding, they would find a truth more profound than they had ever imagined. There were once two friends who had shared many seasons together. They laughed under the same sun, walked beneath the same moon, and confided in each other as though they were two sides of the same soul. They spoke in hushed voices under starlit skies, making promises that felt unbreakable, believing that no distance could ever separate them. One day, life carried them in different directions. One remained in the place they always knew, where the streets were familiar, the air carried the scent of home, and every corner held a memory of their shared past. The other set out into the unknown, drawn by dreams and ambitions that led them beyond the horizon. At first, distance did not diminish their connection. They sent messages, exchanged stories, and kept each other close with the magic of words. But as the days passed, something began to shift. The messages became sporadic, the calls grew shorter, and eventually silence settled between them. Days turned into weeks. Weeks stretched into months. The one who stayed behind held their phone, staring at the screen, waiting for a sign that they had not been forgotten. The mind became a restless sea, waves of doubt crashing against the shore of reason. Had they changed? Had they found something or someone more important? Had I done something wrong? The silence was deafening, filling the void with questions that had no answers. Unable to bear the weight of uncertainty, the friend who had been left behind embarked on a journey, not just to find the one who had gone, but to find the wisdom to understand what their absence truly meant. They sought answers, searching not only for their friend, but for peace within themselves. What they discovered would change them forever, teaching them that silence is not always an absence, and that sometimes letting go is the greatest act of love. Through encounters with wisdom, the journey unfolded, not just to seek, but to understand. And in that understanding, they would find a truth more profound than they had ever imagined. The first teacher was a hermit who lived in the mountains. Known for his silence and deep wisdom, the seeker approached and asked, "Why do people disappear? Why do they stop calling?" The hermit did not answer immediately. Instead, he poured a cup of tea but did not hand it over. He simply placed it on the table. The seeker, confused, reached for the cup. Only then did the hermit speak. "If you want tea, you take it. If you do not want it, you leave it. The tea does not chase you." The seeker frowned. "What does this have to do with my question?" The hermit smiled. "People like tea are where they choose to be. Some drink from your cup, some do not. The tea does not worry, it simply exists. When someone does not call or message, it is not always personal. It is simply where they are in life. You are still who you are, just as the tea remains tea." The seeker sat in silence for a moment, watching the steam rise from the cup. The simplicity of the lesson was profound. In that moment, they realized they had spent so much time worrying about why someone was absent that they had forgotten to simply exist in their own peace. They took a sip of the tea, allowing its warmth to seep through them, and for the first time in a long while, they felt light, as though a burden had been lifted. The hermit continued, "You cannot make someone stay, just as you cannot force the river to flow in one direction. If they wish to be here, they will come on their own. If they choose another path, let them go without bitterness. Your peace is not dependent on their presence, just as the tea's essence does not change whether it is sipped or left untouched. True contentment comes from knowing that everything moves in its own time." The seeker nodded, setting down the cup. They had come seeking answers about absence, but they had found something much deeper. The understanding that life, like tea, must be savored without attachment. With a grateful bow to the hermit, they left, carrying a new kind of wisdom with them, one that no longer sought to chase but to simply be. The seeker then met a merchant known for his fairness. He was weighing goods on a scale when the seeker approached. "Wise merchant," the seeker said, "tell me, why do people who once valued us become distant?" The merchant placed a heavy stone on one side of the scale and small pebbles on the other. The merchant looked at the seeker and adjusted the scale slightly. "Balance changes with time," he said. "Sometimes people weigh their priorities differently. What once held great value may now hold less, not because it is worthless, but because their needs have shifted. People's priorities change. If someone does not reach out, it may mean their life has taken a different turn. It is not about your worth, it is about their journey." The seeker watched as the merchant continued his work, carefully balancing weights and measures. But what if I still wish to be part of their life? The seeker asked. The merchant paused and smiled. Then you must understand that real connections are not forced. A scale will always seek balance, no matter what is placed upon it. If someone drifts away, it is not always a reflection of what you lack. It is a reflection of the ever-changing nature of life. Instead of lamenting their absence, cherish the time you had and trust that if they are meant to return, they will. The seeker nodded slowly, absorbing the wisdom in the merchant's words. They realized that holding on to what once was only created unnecessary suffering. People change, circumstances shift, and priorities realign. It is not a loss. It is simply the rhythm of life. With a lighter heart, the seeker left the market, carrying a newfound peace within them. They no longer felt the weight of absence as rejection, but as a natural ebb and flow, just as the merchant's scale always found balance in the end. Finally, the seeker arrived at a temple where an old monk sat on an empty bench. The temple was serene, with the soft rustling of leaves and the distant sound of a flowing stream. The seeker, feeling the weight of unanswered questions, approached the monk and asked, "How should I respond to those who forget me?" The monk, without looking up, pointed to the bench beside him. "Sit." The seeker hesitated, then took a seat. Time passed. The wind carried whispers through the trees. Leaves twirled in the air before settling onto the ground. A bird landed on a branch, chirped a few times, and then flew away. The silence stretched between them, but the monk remained still. The seeker shifted uneasily, expecting words of wisdom, yet none came. Frustration flickered in their heart, but they remained seated, waiting. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the monk spoke. "Did you see how the bench remained still, no matter who came or left?" The seeker nodded. "Be like the bench," the monk said, his voice calm and unwavering. "Let people come. Let people go. Stay still in your own peace. When someone is silent, do not chase. Do not beg. Do not resent. Be still. Let them come if they wish. Let them go if they must. You remain whole regardless." The seeker furrowed their brows, trying to grasp the meaning behind the words. "But what if they were important to me? What if I can't let go?" they asked, their voice tinged with longing. The monk chuckled softly and gestured to the trees around them. "Look at these trees. Some have shed their leaves, yet they do not grieve. The leaves return in the spring, and if they do not, the tree still grows. If someone leaves, it is not because you are not worthy, but because they must walk their own path, and so must you." The seeker looked around, noticing how effortlessly nature embraced change. The trees did not clutch onto their leaves, nor did the wind resist carrying them away. Everything moved in harmony, without force, without desperation. The monk continued, "People are like the seasons. Some stay longer, some pass quickly. But if you chase the summer during winter, you will only create suffering for yourself. Instead, embrace what is. Love those who are present. Let go of those who drift away. True peace is not in possessing, but in allowing." A deep realization settled over the seeker. They had spent so much time clinging to those who had gone that they had forgotten to cherish those who remained. They exhaled, feeling a lightness they had not felt in a long time. "I understand now," they said softly. The monk simply smiled and rose from the bench, leaving the seeker to sit in the stillness. For the first time, the silence no longer felt empty. It was full of peace, full of acceptance, full of quiet wisdom that spoke louder than any words ever could. The seeker, now wiser, returned home. They no longer waited anxiously for the phone to ring. They no longer let silence create suffering. Instead, they understood that silence does not always mean abandonment. People have their own lives, struggles, and paths to walk. Priorities shift, but worth remains. Just because someone does not reach out does not mean you are forgotten or unworthy. They began to notice things they had overlooked before. The soft hum of the morning breeze, the golden light spilling through the windows, the rhythmic sound of their own breath. Peace was not in noise or constant reassurance, but in the stillness they had once feared. They realized that being alone did not mean being lonely. It meant being present, fully engaged with the life unfolding before them. One evening, they brewed a cup of tea, inhaling its warmth, feeling its heat between their palms. They took a sip, savoring the moment without distraction. There was no need for someone else to fill the space. They had become whole within themselves. Time passed, but the anxiety that had once gripped their heart no longer held power over them. If the phone rang, it rang. If it did not, the silence was no longer empty. It was full of peace. They no longer searched for validation outside of themselves. Instead, they embraced the quiet, knowing it was not loneliness, but an invitation to go deeper, to find joy in the present, and to let life unfold without resistance. And so, as the days stretched into nights and the world moved forward, the seeker no longer clung to what had been or what could be. They had learned to simply be, trusting that whatever was meant for them would come in its own time. In the stillness of their heart, they found something greater than the presence of another. They found themselves. If this story has resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on your own relationship with silence. Have you feared it? Have you misunderstood it? Let us know in the comments below. And if you found value in this journey, consider subscribing to the channel so we can continue exploring these deep lessons together. Like this video to help others find it, and share it with someone who might need these words today. Remember, silence is not a void. It is a space where wisdom and peace reside. Until next time, embrace the quiet.